This movie recapped. Today I am going to explain comedy, romance movie called Bridesmaids. Annie Walker, Kristen Wiig, is a solitary lady in her mid-30s, living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. After her bread kitchen fizzled, she lost her sweetheart and every last bit of her reserve funds, and presently works in a gem dealer's store selling wedding bands. In spite of the fact that her flaky mother, Jill Clayburgh, urges her to get back, Annie rents a room from English settler Gil, Matt Lucas, and his languid overweight sister Bryn, Revolutionary Wilson. She has a sexual no-surprises relationship with the narcissistic Ted, John Hamm, however expects something else. Just her kinship with Lillian Donovan, Maya Rudolph, keeps her normal. Lillian becomes drawn into a well-off broker living in Chicago and requests that Annie be her respectable servant. At the commitment party at Lillian's home, Annie meets her kindred bridesmaids, Lillian's critical cousin Rita, Wendy McLendon Flock, hopeful companion Becca, Ellie Kemper, tactless future sister by marriage Megan, Melissa McCarthy, and Helen Harris. 3. Rose Byrne, the lovely yet vain spouse of Lillian's life partner's chief. Helen and Annie take a moment abhorrence to one another as they are both become quickly envious of the other's companionship with Lillian, yet Lillian convinces them to hang out. During a round of duplicates tennis, Annie and Helen are both hyper-serious, intentionally hitting each other with their volleys on different occasions. A couple of days after the fact, Annie takes Lillian and the bridesmaids to a Brazilian cafe for lunch prior to going to a stylish wedding outfit studio. While Lillian is in the bathroom, Annie proposes a Parisian-themed wedding party, yet Helen thinks this is an impractical notion. At the marriage outfit studio, Helen again capitalizes on her leverage to acquire them access in light of the fact that Annie didn't understand that reservations were required. In any case, everybody aside from Helen, who didn't eat the meat at the cafe, turns out to be sick with food contamination. While every other person turns out to be sick, Helen orders for everybody the bridesmaid's dress that she loved the best. Stressed over her funds, Annie recommends a lone wolfess party at Lillian's folks' oceanside house. Helen overrules her and books an excursion to Las Vegas. Because of her pride and self-image, Annie will not permit Helen to purchase a top-of-the-line ticket for herself and sits in mentor. Since Annie is hesitant to fly, Helen gives her tranquilizers and liquor. This makes Annie intoxicated and distrustful, and her explosions make the plane land in Casper, Wyoming, where she, Lillian and the bridesmaids are accompanied off the plane and the Lone Ranger's party plans are hence dropped. On the transport trip back to Milwaukee, Annie attempts to apologize yet Lillian declares that she believes Helen should assume control over arranging the shower and wedding. Annie keeps on expecting a relationship with Ted, however starts playing with official Nathan Rhodes, Chris O'Dowd, a well-disposed traffic cop who before had let her off without a ticket for broken taillights. Nathan urges her to open another bread shop, yet Annie declines. Her business's disappointment was difficult to such an extent that she has quit any pretense of baking completely. In the wake of going through the night together, Nathan purchases baking supplies so Annie can make them a delectable breakfast. Irritated, Annie leaves. At her condo, Gil and Bryn tell her she needs to move out. With no place else to go, she moves back in with her mom. Annie makes a trip back to Chicago for the wedding party at Helen's home. Helen has made an intricate variant of Annie's Parisian subject, then upstages Annie's sincere, high-quality shower gift by giving Lillian an outing to Paris to be fitted for her wedding outfit by one of the world's top originators. Maddened that Helen has assumed praise for the Parisian subject, Annie pitches an attitude fit and is removed from the shower. Lillian tells her not to come to the wedding, all things considered. Coming back, Annie's vehicle stalls. Nathan answers the crisis call and lets Annie know the amount she hurt him and not to reach him once more. Ted comes to get Annie at the same time. When he anticipates that she should perform oral sex on him returning, she severs the relationship and heads back home. Over the course of the following a few days, Annie becomes withdrawn, declining to take off from her mom's home and staring at the TV fanatically. Megan tracks down her and advises her to quit feeling frustrated about herself. Annie understands her blunders and attempts to set things right with Nathan by baking him a cake. In any case, he seems to pass on it close to home for raccoons to eat. Upon the arrival of the wedding, which Annie doesn't expect to join in, Helen shows up on the doorstep, asking for help in finding Lillian, who has disappeared. Helen mournfully makes sense of how desolate she feels and apologizes for all she has done to hurt Annie out of desire. They pull up close by Nathan in his squad car, and after some influence, he hesitantly assists Annie and Helen with tracking down Lillian at her own loft. Lillian had gone there upset by the constantly fussing over Helen had done in arranging everything and her apprehension that Annie will have nobody to be with. Annie tells her all will be great and assists her with preparing for the wedding. Annie resumes her place as housekeeper of distinction at the wedding, which Helen has organized to incorporate neon signs, firecrackers, and an appearance by Wilson Phillips. After the wedding, Helen again apologizes to Annie and trusts they can be companions from here on out. Understanding that Annie and Nathan were falling head over heels, Helen sorted out for him to get Annie after the wedding. He brings her back home in his crew vehicle, lights glimmering and alarm crying.